Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll be beginning my speech in three, two, one. So there are two parts to my speech. Firstly, the framing. So how does the registry works? There are multiple characteristics of how the registry will work. So firstly, it's mandatory identity verification. Every person must register their real world identity with the national registry before creating a social media account. And secondly, once it's verified, it will become traceable, which means that the registry links a person government's verified identity to their social media account. Thirdly, pseudonyms remain allowed. Users can use usernames, nicknames, or anonymous looking profiles publicly. The public does not see their real name. Fourth, registry is not publicly searchable. Ordinary users, employers, schools, journalists, and other organizations cannot check the registry or search for someone's real identity. Fifth, the registry is restricted government access. Only authorized government agencies can access the real identity, and only when there is a legitimate legal reason, such as investigating harassment, fraud, threats, or other serious offenses. Sixth, these are platform verifications and government storages. So social media companies will confirm that an account belongs to a verified person, while the government maintains the registry. Platforms do not get unrestricted access to the entire government's database. Seventh, the access is monitored. So every time an official accesses someone's information, the access is recorded and subject to oversight, preventing officials from casually searching somebody's identity. 8. There is consequences. Commit serious online wrongdoing, authorities can trace the account back to the responsible individual instead of allowing them to hide permanently behind anonymity. So, status quo currently in status quo, social media platforms generally allow users to create accounts without publicly verifying their real identity, and this means that but platforms and authorities can sometimes trace users through their IP address, phone numbers, emails, device data, or platform cooperation, but this process can be slow and incomplete. So there are four main problems with status quo. Firstly, anonymity lowers accountability. This means that people can create fake accounts and repeatedly evade consequences after harassment, scams, threats, or misinformation. Secondly, enforcement is reactive. This means that authorities need to investigate after harm has already occurred and request information from other platforms. Third, repeated offenders can return easily. So somebody whose account is banned can create another account under a different identity. Fourth, victims have limited resources. It can be difficult for victims to identify who is actually behind an account. So what this means is that our model will create a national registry linking every social media account to your verified real identity. The identity does not need to be displayed publicly. Users can still use usernames or pseudonyms. The government simply knows who is behind each account. Platforms verify users against the registry when they create accounts, and access to registry information should be restricted to authorized authorities and only used under clearly defined legal procedures. So there are three main stakeholders here. Firstly, ordinary social media users. So who are they? They are the majority of people who use social media normally. The benefit they reach from this is that greater protection. They will receive greater protection from scams, impersonation, harassment, and targeted abuse. They matter a lot because they are the largest group affected by the policy. We agree that they lose the ability we agree that they lose the ability to be completely anonymous to the government, but their real identity remains hidden to the public. In our world, for normal users, almost nothing changes in their everyday social media experience. They can still use usernames and pseudonyms. And the second stakeholder here who are victims of online abuse. These people are people who experience serious harassment, stalking, threats, fraud, or impersonation. The benefit they can achieve here is that authorities can identify the perpetrator instead of victims being told that the offender is untraceable. This matters a lot because these people currently bear the consequences of someone else's anonymity. In our world, the registry shifts power from the offender can hide to the victim can seek accountability. The third stakeholder here is law enforcement or governments. They are the police and relevant government agencies. The benefit they will receive is that they will have faster and more reliable identification of people suspected of serious online crimes. They matter because investigators can spend less time trying to connect anonymous social accounts to real individuals. This is also a very good safeguard because their access is restricted to authorized officials and legitimate investigators In our world, the government gets traceability without making identities publicly available. So this brings me to my first argument, which is that the registry makes online spaces safer by creating accountability. So what this means is that every social media account is linked to a government verified identity. Users can hide their real name from the public through usernames, but if they commit serious harms, authorities can trace the account back to them. This prevents offenders from simply creating new fake accounts to escape consequences. Therefore, the registry turns anonymity to a shield against accountability into merely a form of privacy. This is true because anonymity lowers the perceived consequences of harmful behavior, and the verification will make evading public punishment much harder. This is also very likely because people are less likely to commit serious harm when they know that they can be identified. So repeat offenders cannot create endless fake accounts. This also has significant impact because it will reduce harassment, scams, impersonations, and threats. And this will give victims a clearer path to justice. This is sustainable because every new account follows the same verification system and accountability remains built into social media permanently. And this also has a big impact because social media can affect millions of users and one harmful account can target many victims. So there are three main impacts to this. Firstly, there's less online crime and abuse. So higher accountability deters harassment, scams, threats, and impersonation, and repeat offenders cannot easily hide behind new accounts. The impact to this is that fewer people can become victims. Secondly, there's easier justice for victims. This is because authorities can identify offenders more quickly, and victims have a clearer pathway to report and pursue serious abuse. The end impact to this is that more offenders will face consequences, and victims are better protected. Thirdly, there is a much safer and more trustworthy online space because users will know their harmful behavior can be traced and people will have greater confidence interacting online. The impact to this is that long-term improvement and in the quality of there will be a long-term improvement in the quality and safety of social media. So I'm going to do a simple weighing on their best case against our worst case. So their best case, existing moderations will handle most abuse, but in our worst case, some offenders will still evade the system, but many more can be identified than before. Their case depends on the current system working perfectly, while our worst case still improves accountability while preserving the public anonymity. So in conclusion, we trade complete anonymity for meaningful accountability, which makes online spaces significantly safer, and this is why I'm proud to propose.
All right. I'd like to thank the speaker for this speech. Let's invite the leader of opposition. Leader of opposition, the first speaker. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, wait, I'm facing technical issues. Wait. Okay, my name is Siti, and I'm the first speaker for opposition side, and my pronouns is she, her, and I'll prefer my POI verbally. Now, I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Firstly, government side already framed that there will be mandatory ID verification and can use and then they also said that they can use username etc. and so public won't see their name clearly and access will be recorded and authorities can't just simply track their ID and repeat offender can return easily. But fake account doesn't mean anonymity itself is bad. They claim that anonymity itself is really, really bad. They're wrong. And the fact that people can create fake account does not justify requiring everyone to attach their real identity to to their speech. You are solving the problem of some people abusing anonymity by imposing the risk of identification on everyone, including whistleblowers, activists, minorities, and also ordinary citizens who simply just want to express their voice. People can use fake, like you guys claimed before, government side claimed before that people can use fake account for harassment, scam, misinformation, evading bans, but people can also use anonymity for reporting corruption, criticizing the government, discussing sensitive experiences, expressing unpopular opinions, protecting themselves from retaliation. Even if registry reduces fake account, you haven't proven that the benefits actually outweigh the cost itself. Your policy doesn't just target malicious fake account, it removes anonymity from legitimate users too. The question is not whether fake accounts are a problem. The question is whether eliminating anonymity is a appropriate solution. Now, moving on. You guys also said that registry is impenetrable. But technology isn't the only risk. People are. Government workers with access can leak, steal, or reuse data no matter what, how strong the encryption risk is. No system can fully control human behavior. You guys said that you guys will apply and make sure there will be tracking everything, but you guys haven't proven that it will actually be successful. And no digital system has ever been proven permanently unhackable. Every secure database in history was called safe until it wasn't. Government cannot guarantee that it's ever a first ever exception. Even one leak exposes the real identity of every citizen at once. Government is betting the entire population safety on a promise no government or company has ever been able to keep. Now, moving on, they said that their will receive greater protection from scams, and they said that it's only open to government and private to public. If committed crimes, they can trace, so it makes it easier to trace. But the thing is that people will receive greater. You guys said that people will receive greater protection for scams, but real name registration does not prevent scams from happening. Scammers can still use stolen identities, fake account, hack account, or even account registered under someone else's identity. At most, the registry help authorities investigate after a scam occurs. So they are sacrificing everyone's privacy for a benefit that is not even guaranteed to stop scams. It is open to government but private to public. The issue isn't whether ordinary citizens can see the database or not. The issue is that the government possesses the information in the first place. Government can experience data breaches, insider leaks, or misuse of information. More importantly, citizens now know that the government can connect their online speech to their real identity. We already have targeted investigation for everybody. For misuse of information in the first place. Government, and furthermore, we already have targeted investigated for serious crime. Police can request information from platforms where there is legitimate evidence of wrongdoing. Their policy instead forces every innocent user into a government registry just because some people commit crimes, and some criminals can still use stolen account, fake identities, or foreign platforms, so the worst offenders may simply evade the system. Now, moving on, I'll be starting with my framing. How we actually define national registry is state-run database linking real legal ID to every social media account. This applies to all users on social media. So now there will be 4 stakeholders here. Firstly is whistleblowers, which is activists, citizens, social media platform, lastly minorities. Now in the status quo, there is no registry in this. There's no registry in the status quo. So right now we are debating whether we want it or not. But on our side, we wouldn't want that. Users can post anonymously or under a fake name. Our world maintains the role online freedom of expression in our world. This without the creation of the registry. This freedom protects criticism, which strengthens the democracy. Citizens catch government mistakes early before they grow into a bigger harms. Anonymity also stops self-silencing, so people stay honest online instead of hiding their real opinion. Our end goal is that we want to protect free speech and user safety without government surveillance of their identity. Why we can reach this goal is because in our world, we target bad actors through platform tools and warrants. We don't put citizens in position of exposure to catch a few. For serious crime like threats, doxing, or exploitation, police can apply for a court warrant, and platform hands over that one user data only under case by case order. And this works because bad actors get caught through evidence and warrants, not by scanning a whole population identity first. This expose is permanent and irreversible Once citizen ID is in the system, their work can't undo that. Even if they are never investigated, your data still sits there, vulnerable to leaks or misuse. We don't need to unmask everyone to catch the few who breaks the law. Our mechanism targets bad actors directly throughout the platform and warrants and solve cases instead of forcing every citizen to give up their identity in the first place and prove innocence later. Now, moving on to my first argument, with the creation of national registry which contains real identity, a lot of people can be silenced. What we mean is that people need anonymity to speak safely, because a lot of people have a lot of controversial opinion. What we mean is that we are not claiming that. We are not claiming that everyone will be silenced. We are claiming that mandatory real identity traceable actually increases the cost of speaking, causing some legitimate users, especially people with more to lose, to self-censor. That reduces vulnerable speech and weakens accountability. People will become more afraid to speak openly because they know that if they do speak openly, they will be traced by the government, and citizens will avoid criticizing the government and exposing corruption. They will stop from discussing controversial topics or even supporting unpopular causes. Even if the government never directly censors anyone, that mere knowledge that every online action can be traced back to real identity changes a lot of people's behavior. A national registry fundamentally changes the relationship between citizens and the state. It transforms speech from a low-risk activity into a high accountability activity, because every opinion becomes permanently connected to a legal identity. This changes the cost-benefit calculation of speaking. As the cost of speaking increases, controversial speech decreases. This result is not censorship, but systematic self-censorship. That's all for my speech. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank the speaker for this speech. Let's invite the DPM.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so there'll be two parts of my speech. First, which will be the rebuttals, and second, the arguments. Before that, I'm going to continue on with the preemptive that my first speaker didn't have time to elaborate on. We concede that criminals that are professionals at hacking or similar abilities can fake their information or find ways around verification. We never claim it eliminates all crime. It raises the cost and risk of being anonymous and makes evasion harder. We concede that existing laws already allow police to identify offenders. Existing investigations are often reactive and slower. Our registry makes identifying verification built into the system from the start. But people will still be anonymous for privacy and safety. But the government cannot misuse the registry. How bad cyberbullying and scamming is in status quo? Cyberbullying is around 5% to 21% of children and adolescents. Online scams. In 2025, Malaysia recorded 66,204 cybercrime cases, with losses of around RM 2.97 billion. Up claims that the fake accounts online can be used to raise minority voices or criticize the government or just whistleblowers. Why this is not likely? Our model does not ban pseudonyms. Users can still hide their identity from the public. The government only assesses identities for legitimate legal investigations, not simply because someone criticizes it. Complete anonymity also protects the scammers, harassers, and malicious actors. So the benefit comes with a very, very significant harm. A system based on accountability is more sustainable than allowing anyone to create unlimited fake identity. No, thank you. Our gift is that we consider that anonymity can protect vulnerable speakers, especially whistleblowers and government critics. However, they only need public anonymity, not complete anonymity from lawful investigation. Our take is that we preserve anonymity as privacy, but remove anonymity as immunity. Why do we win this clash? We win this clash because on their side, It has maximum anonymity, but malicious actors also receive maximum protection. On our side, pseudonymity remained for vulnerable voices, while serious wrongdoing can still be traced. Therefore, we capture most of the benefits of anonymity without allowing it to become a shield for abuse. And I'll take the POI.
Okay, just now you said that people can, under your work, people on social media can still speak up about those issues. But how can you ensure that in the government there can still be bad actors? You cannot ensure there is no corruption and there's no censoring that's going to be happening as long as you follow your own model.
I will answer that at the end of my speech. Moving on to my second rebuttals. It is possible for people to hack into the government registry or evade the government registry. Why this is not likely? Possible doesn't equal to inevitable. Every database faces security risks, but that does not mean it will be inevitability to be hacked. High security. The registry can use encryption, access controls, multi-factor authentication, and regular security audits. Evading is even harder. Every account still requires identity information, making mass creation of fake accounts much more difficult. Even partial success also matters. The system does not need to stop 100% of abuse to reduce anonymity and improve accountability. Our gift is that we acknowledge that no database is completely immune to hacking or evasion. However, this is a reason for strong cybersecurity safeguards, not a reason to reject the entire registry. Our take is that not perfectly secure does not mean useless. The relevant comparison is not a perfect registry versus a hacked registry, but our imperfect registry versus today's system of widespread anonymity. Why do we win this clash? We win this clash because that even if some users evade the system, millions of ordinary accounts can still be verified and traceable. Their side provides no additional mechanism to prevent anonymous abuse. Our model raises the difficulty of evasion while retaining existing moderation and law enforcement tools. Now I'm going to move on to my argument. My argument is that the registry gives victims a faster and more reliable path to justice. Victims of serious harassment, scams, threats, and impersonation often cannot identify the person behind an account. A registry makes an authorized to connect the account to a verified identity. This makes reporting and investigation more effective. This is true because authorities have a verified identity to investigate instead of starting with an anonymous username. Offenders cannot simply disappear by deleting an account. Why this is likely? Every account is really linked to an identity. Authorities do not need to rely entirely on finding information from multiple platforms. This has a significant impact because victims can receive protection and seek justice. More offenders can be held accountable. This is sustainable because the system applies to every new account continuously. It does not depend on individual platforms voluntarily cooperating each time. Also, this has a very big reach. Anyone can become a victim of online scams, harassment, or impersonation. A single offender can target many people. The impact to this is that it has faster justice. Authorities can identify offenders more quickly. Victims get protection and legal remedies sooner. It also has fewer repeat offenders. Offenders cannot easily create a new anonymous account after being banned. It also has a greater victim confidence. Victims know serious offenders can be traced. The impact of this is more people are willing to report abuse instead of feeling helpless. My nuance is that we do not claim every offender will be caught. We only need to make identification significantly easier and more reliable. And I'm going to reply to the POI right now is that you said that there might be corruption in our role to silence abused minorities. I'm going to reply to this. My reply to this is that is why our model does not give unlimited government access. Identities are only revealed through authorized legal procedures with oversight. If corruption is your concern, the solution is stronger safeguards, not allowing abusers to hide behind security. And this is what I'm proud to propose.
All right, I'd like to thank the speaker for that speech. Let's invite the dialogue.
Allow me a few moments to compose myself. Thank you. I'll say when I want to start my speech later, I'll be giving a self-introduction first. My name is Daryl Chongzhe Kai. I'm the second speaker for opposition, and my pronouns are he, him. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. For my speech, I'll be going on with my rebuttals, and then I will include one of my rebuttals inside again after my arguments, which means rebuttals, arguments, then rebuttals again. Okay, so government said that their model wouldn't silence people because people can still talk and they only use identity when the government flags it. But you're wrong, because can speak doesn't mean can speak freely. The government is defining freedom of speech as merely having the technical ability to press post. This is not meaningful freedom. The question is whether people will still be willing to express controversial, unpopular, or critical opinions when every account is permanently connected to their real ID. There is actual recent empirical evidence supporting this. A 2025 study of mandatory back-end real name identification found that users did not simply stop posting. Rather, the informativeness of their posts declined, with language become more ambiguous and less opinionated to the user. The researchers attribute this to increased perceived regulatory risk. Now, government also said that registry give victims a faster and more reliable path to justification, and they can connect the account to the ID, and they don't need to rely on finding info from the multiple platforms. But that response completely misses our argument. We are not saying your policy physically prevents people from speaking. We are saying it changes the cost of speaking. Under their model, every social media account is permanently connected to a real person. That means before we post something controversial, we have to consider that could what I post be flagged? Could the government identify me? Could this affect my job, my family, my reputation, or my safety? I don't need to actually be punished for my behavior to change. If I believe there is a possibility that my identity can be exposed, I will naturally become more cautious about what I say. Government is confusing the absence of a ban with the presence of freedom. Someone can technically say something while still being deterred from saying it. For example, if I know that every political opinion I post can potentially be connected to my real identity, that government can flag it, I may still have the ability to post, but I am much less likely to express something controversial. And that's especially important for whistleblowers, activists, victims speaking about powerful people in power, employees criticizing their employers, or people discussing controversial social issues. The value of anonymity isn't that it lets people avoid consequences for wrongdoing. It's that it lets legitimate speakers speak without unnecessary personal risk to themselves. Now, I'll be extending my first speaker's arguments. Okay, how does the self-silencing in their work actually happen? Identification removes the protective barrier between opinions and personal identity. People often express controversial opinions only because there is more separation between what they say and who they are. The registry removes that separation. Imagine that I want to express an opinion that could expose me to legal consequences or public backlash. If my identity can easily be linked to my statement, I have to consider those risks before I speak. That is the natural process. As a result, I may choose to remain silent. No, thank you. With National Registry, speech becomes traceable. A controversial statement is no longer just a statement. It becomes a statement that can be connected to your name, your employer, your work, your professional reputation, and your family. And also, people begin filtering themselves. This doesn't mean that they stop talking altogether. Instead, they stop discussing topics such as like the controversial ones, public policy failures, socially unpopular opinions, or political reform, which is very important in a democracy, by the way. So this is what we define self-censorship by. And the effect express beyond the individuals who are directly affected. Even if only a few people experience negative consequences, others will notice. Now, this is true because anonymity gives people a degree of protection between their speech and their personal identity. When speech is connected to a verified legal identity, people have to consider the possible consequences of what they say before speaking online. The important point is that self-censorship does not require the government to actively punish every single person. People can change their behavior simply because they believe punishment, surveillance, discrimination, or social consequences are possible. People are generally more cautious when an action can be permanently connected to their real name and their family. This is especially important for speech involving political criticism, whistleblowing, controversial opinions, and unpopular causes in the society. where the potential consequences are higher. This is important because this debate is not about whether people can technically speak online. It is about whether people can speak freely. The government isn't banning speech. You can still post whatever you want. Freedom of speech is meaningless if people technically have permission to speak but are too afraid of the consequences to actually do so. The registry changes the cost of speech. Without strong identity requirements, opinions become relatively low personal risk. With a national identity registry, opinion becomes an identifiable person with possible social consequences. If people become afraid to do those things, the public loses access to information and perspective that it needs to hold institutions accountable. Now, they said that people can still talk, that government will only pull identity from the database when necessary. But again, only when necessary isn't a technical limit, it's a promise to people. Government defines necessary, but today it's crime. But tomorrow it can be like what? Criticism, protest, that downplays the government's image. Once the database exists, the trigger for accessing it is whatever the government in power decides. No, thank you. The harm doesn't need government to actually pull your ID. Just knowing that they can is enough for us. People self-censor from the fear of exposure, not the certainty of it. Only when necessary just hides when the line is crossed, when the government crosses the line that affects you and me, ordinary citizens. This matters because free speech isn't about permission to speak. It's about being free from fear while speaking online. A citizen who's too scared to criticize policy isn't free. They are just quiet. Government's promise does not fix that. It just only confirms it. Now, I'll be moving on to my own arguments. Is that their work will have a breach of privacy and it will harm the nation's democracy. What we mean by this is that a national registry creates a central database linking people's real identities to their online accounts and activities. This gives the government an unprecedented amount of information about what citizens say, discuss, and believe online about their government. Democracy depends on citizens being able to criticize, debate, and disagree with those in power without fear of surveillance or retaliation, and a good democracy at that. How it happens is that everyone's real identity is stored alongside their social media identity. If the database is breached, hacked, leaked, or misused by the government, people's identities and online activities are still exposed. Even without a breach, people know that the government can still identify them and punish them for what they've said. This makes citizens more afraid to criticize politicians, participate in protests, expose corruption, or express unpopular political opinions. And there's a less political participation in society and less accountability for governments, which creates a weaker democracy. This is true because centralized databases are attractive targets because compromising one system can expose a huge can expose the whole country, the whole country's population. Information can also be misused by future governments or officials. The policy cannot guarantee that every future administration will respect our citizens, you and me's privacy. This issue is why we cannot ignore in this debate, and this is why I'm proud to oppose. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank the speaker for this speech. Let's invite the governor.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Wait. Wait for a second. Let me open my timer. Okay, I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so continuing my second speaker, you guys, your best case is that victims will report the abuse to platforms or police, and platform cooperates and provide account information, and authorities successfully identify the offender. But this depends on platforms having enough information and corroborating quickly, which is usually not possible. In our worst case is that some offenders still invade identifications through sophisticated methods. However, the registry still gives a verified identity as a starting point for most accounts. Victims have a stronger chance of getting justice than under a system which remain completely anonymous. Why do we win against them? Their best case requires the existing investigation process to work every single time. Our worst case still makes identification easier and prevents many repeat offenders of simply just creating new identities, and even partial improve matters when protecting victims from serious harms. Now I'm gonna do a little bit of weighing. Its first one is certainty. Every single registered account is
UI?
identifiable. No, thank you. Every single registered account is identifiable. The second one is scale. Many users can benefit from better enforcements. Third is severity. Protecting victims from serious harms outweighs the inconvenience of identify verification. I'll take the POI.
Okay, just now you said that victims in your world will actually get justice because the governments can prove. But let me tell you this: what if the victim's abuser or the person who has caused harm to this victim is an important person to the country or someone who serves in the government? That completely contradicts your arguments of how certain victims will actually get justice. Thank you.
I will say that later. Okay, so I'm going to restate our mechanism again. Only the government will have access to the database. The exam of your employer cutting your pay or your family's viewing you negatively is practically impossible because they won't even know it's going to be you. Crime is very clearly stated. Criticism is not a crime. The crime here is cyber scamming and cyberbullying. Odd claims that people are much less likely to speak controversial claims of uncovering government secrets because they are afraid of government silencing them. Not true. Pseudonyms remain allowed. Pseudonyms remain allowed. People can still publicly hide their real identity. The registry only allows access to authorities, legal producers, not simply because someone criticizes the government. Whistleblowers can still submit evidence to protected, legal, or journalistic channels. Their argument assumes the government will abuse the registry, but they have not proven that this is likely under our safeguards. Our give is that we concede. No, thank you. We concede that fear of government retaliation is a legitimate concern, especially for whistleblowers. That is why strict access control and independent oversights are necessary. Our take is that the registry identify who is behind an account. It does not automatically reveals that identity to the government every time someone speaks. Why do we win in this clash? Their model is about protects whistleblowers through complete anonymity, but also protects scammers, harassers, and malicious actors. Our model is that we preserve public pseudonymities while allowing accountability for serious wrongdoing. The opposition must prove that government abuse is more likely and more damaging than the widespread harm caused by the unaccountable anonymous accounts. And now I'm going to reply to the POI. Further clarifications. There are very clear frames on what is punishable crimes. The crimes here are cyber scamming and cyberbullying. If a government official uses the database for other purposes, they are breaking the law of our database that we set. And our weighing, I'm going to do a weighing here. People are much less likely to speak controversial claims of uncovering government. Our case is that we preserve public anonymity while making serious online wrongdoing traceables. Users, they can still use pseudonyms publicly, and government access requires legitimate legal grounds and oversights. This protects ordinary speeches while preventing anonymity from becoming immunity. Why do we win in this clash? Why is our case more likely than theirs? The opposition assumes that the government will misuse the registry to silence criticize, but this is not guaranteed. Our model has restricted access and oversight, making arbitrary identification harder. People can still speak publicly without revealing their true identity to others. Why is our case more suitable than theirs? We can build permanent safeguards, access logs, journal authorizations, and penalties for misuse. public pseudonymity remains available, so people do not lose the ability to protect themselves socially. Unlike relying on government choosing not to investigate, our safeguards are built directly into the system. Why do we have bigger impact than them? Our benefit is that we protect millions users from using scams, harassment, impersonation, and repeat offenders. Their benefit is that protects a very small group of people who may or may want to complete anonymity when making controversial claims. We can preserve most whistleblowers' protection while also gaining accountability across the entire online population. OP also stated that complete anonymity is necessary to protect whistleblowers, government critics, and controversial speeches. Our case is that public pseudonymity and government traceability users can remain anonymous to the public, while authorities can identify through legitimate legal procedures. Our case is more likely than them because the opposition assumes that the government will use the registry to silence criticize, but this is not proven that it will be happening. Our model has restricted access, and users have public pseudonyms, so normal conversation speech is not automatically exposed. And we have a bigger impact than them because our benefit reduces scams, harassment, and impersonation, while their benefit is that they protect complete anonymity mainly for whistleblowers and people who fear retaliations. And we preserve most of the protective benefits of anonymity while gaining accountability. And this is why I am proud to propose.
All right, I'd like to thank this speaker for this speech. Let's invite the opposition whip.
Please give me a few moments to set up my timer and to compose myself. Thank you. My name is Hui Bing. I am the third speaker. My pronouns are she, her, and I will accept POIs verbally. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so what has government said? They said that victims of abuse can identify the perpetrator, but we absolutely agree that victims of abuse deserve a mechanism to identify and report their perpetrators. But that does not prove that we need a national registry containing the real identity of every social media user. So why do we need to identify? Why do we need to identify everyone in order to identify an abuser? We are breaching everyone's privacy just to identify one singular person. If a victim reports that a particular account is abusing or threatening them, the government can investigate that specific account through a targeted legal process. We don't need to pre-register the identities of millions of innocent users just because one of them eventually might become an offender. So we're not saying that don't identify the abusers. We're saying that to identify the suspected abuser when there's evidence rather than identifying everyone in advance. Government also claims that we only use identity when the government needs it. But that phrase is just doing all the work in your model. What exactly does need then mean? If it means that there's a reasonable evidence of serious wrongdoing, then why can't you just use targeted investigations against those specific accounts? If it means something broader, then you have given the government power to identify ordinary citizens based on this discretionary decision. Either way, you have not solved our concern. The fact that the government promises to access the database responsibly does not change the fact that every user knows the state and has the ability to uncover who they are. Freedom of speech is affected not only by actual punishment, but by the credible probability of punishment or exposure. Governments claim that in their world, it would be more efficient, but it will be not true, because we accept that registry may make identification much more efficient, but efficiency is not the same as is not the same as necessity, and it is not enough to justify collecting the real identities of every social media user. The government needs to prove two things. Okay, so the first one is that this efficiency is significant enough to materially improve outcomes for victims. And the second thing they need to prove is that we cannot achieve the same outcomes through targeted identification of suspected perpetrators. If they only say it is fast, if like government says if it's faster by how much? And at what cost? You are making millions of innocent users give up conditional anonymity so that the government can investigate a much smaller number of offenders and more conveniently. So imagine if the police said it would be more efficient to have the fingerprints, DNA, and movements of every single citizen because we could solve crimes faster. That sounds really wrong, right? So efficiency alone clearly isn't enough. We require proportionality. The power given to the state must be justified by the problem it solves. So we are willing to do the trade-off where the legal process will take longer by going through more parties, but your harm to the majority, which is citizens, outweigh your short-term benefits. So government also claims that whistleblowers can still submit evidence, and they think we assume that the government abuses the system. So speed doesn't justify mass identification. Even if platforms take time to provide information, this is an investigative efficiency problem, not a reason to create a national registry containing everyone's identity. We can prove cooperation between the police and platforms, especially for urgent cases, without permanently registering every single citizen. The registry doesn't guarantee immediate safety either. Knowing the account's registered identity doesn't automatically stop the offender. The person could be attacked, could be using a stolen or hacked account or someone's identity. So authorities will still need to investigate and still intervene into this case. So we also have fast targeted disclosure. For those serious threats like doxing or exploitation, authorities can use emergency procedures or warrants to obtain the relevant account information. So what does this give? This gives the victim protection without exposing everyone else's identity. So I'll be moving on to some extensions for my second speaker. So why is this important? So based on their arguments, why is this important in debate? So basically, democracy requires citizens to criticize those in power. This is important. So if citizens know their political speech is connected to their real identity, they become less willing to speak. This means that the registry doesn't just affect privacy, it also affects how democracy functions. So government trades away fundamental democratic safeguard just to make it somewhat easier to identify some online offenders. So a democracy is not healthy when people are technically free to speak but afraid to use that freedom. So the stakeholder benefits to this is that the first stakeholder benefits is that the citizens. So they get greater privacy and much more freedom to express their own opinions, and they have less fear of retaliation. The second stakeholders are the journalists and the whistleblowers. So they can investigate and expose corruption much more safely, and sources are much more willing to provide that kind of information without knowing that people are just looking at their personal information. And third one is political minorities and activists. So they can organize and criticize the government without automatically exposing themselves like they would in government's work, harming the citizens' freedom. So harming citizens of freedom assembly as well. And this creates a much more diverse political opinions. This can make more diverse political opinions enter public discussions. So society also benefits from this. There is a greater government accountability. So more unbiased and safer political debate. So there can be more unbiased and safer political debates on social media. And citizens are not afraid of getting on their nation's bad side. So in our world, our world points to stronger democratic participation. So the impact to this is that there is less self-censorship. People fear posting the wrong thing, controversial opinions. So controversial opinions will disappear from public discussion, even if their opinion is important to the political debate. And there will be less accountability. Whistleblowers and critics become less willing to expose the government's wrongdoing. So what does this lead to? This leads to politicians facing less scrutiny. And this also can weaken democracy. So less criticism plus less participation, and with less diversity of opinions, this creates to citizens having a poor understanding of political issues and less ability to hold their leaders accountable. And this also has a privacy breach. If the database is compromised, this damage affects millions of innocent users simultaneously. simultaneously, I repeat, millions of innocent users, not just the criminals. So what is this debate actually about? This debate isn't simply about whether real-time registration makes it easier to catch criminals. It's actually about whether we should sacrifice the privacy and freedom of millions of innocent users just to make enforcement against a minority more convenient. So what did government prove? So they proved that a registry can make identification easier. If an account commits a crime, authorities can more quickly connect to their account to a legal identity, and this may help some victims and invigilators. And that's all for my speech. This is why I'm proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
All right, I'd like to thank the speaker for their speech. Let's invite the opposition reply speaker.
Maybe, sorry, there's someone in the room. There's a foreign person in the room. Let's let them leave for. Okay. Beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. We've stated this before. This debate is not about whether people can post on social media. It is about whether people are free to post without fear once their legal identity is attached to their accounts. The first clash is self-censorship. Our site showed identity traceability increases the cost of speaking. Citizens self-censor before punishment ever happens, based on fear alone, their own fear. Government's response is that criticism is not a crime, so no one needs to be silenced. But we win because this response assumes government intentions will stay fixed. But judge, governments prioritize staying in power. There is no guarantee future that governments treat criticism the same way today's government does. Misuse can happen quietly, without public record, and go unnoticed with the transition. Government never addressed this shift in future government behavior. Our argument stands unrebuted on this point. Now, the second clash is database security. Our site showed no digital system is provably and like in real life in the status quo unhackable, and human error or insider misuse in the government remains a permanent risk regardless of how good your technology is. Government's response is that the registry is impenetrable and that access is private and restricted to the government only. But again, government provided no evidence that any government or company has ever guaranteed permanent data security. Private to government does not remove risk. It only changes who can actually misuse it. Citizens still know the government holds the link between their identity and their speech, regardless of who else can see it. This alone proves our arguments in argument 1 and argument 3. Now, for the third clash is that targeted warrants and mass registry. Our site showed bad actors can be identified through evidence and warrants without collecting every citizen's identity in advance. Government's response is that this process is slower and less efficient for victims. But again, we win this clash because efficiency is not the same as necessity. Government did not prove that the speed gain that they have on their world outweighs the nation's population loss of privacy in theirs. Government also did not prove that offenders are caught by the registry at all, since stolen accounts, fake credentials, and foreign platforms bypass their point entirely. The registry burdens innocent users while failing to guarantee results against the offenders that it's supposed to target. And what government failed to prove is that government never proved the data stays secure. Government never proved future governments will not misuse access. And they never proved that the registry stops sophisticated offenders. They also never proved efficiency gains outweigh the privacy costs to the entire population that they're supposed to protect. We win this debate because even granting government their best case that the registry makes enforcement somewhat faster in their world, this benefit is narrow and uncertain. Our harm is proven, permanent, and affects every citizen from day one, bringing them long-term benefits. Their benefit depends on assumptions that were never substantiated. Our harm requires no leak and no bad actor to already exist. The fear alone is sufficient to cause the harm we proved. Okay, and then for the next type is that government says that people can still post because the government doesn't automatically reveal their identity. But then again, we win because the ability to technically speak is not the same as feeling safe enough to speak honestly in public. Okay. Opposition, we win because government only proves that speech is not directly banned. We show that the policy can still change people's behavior and reduce genuine expression. Freedom of speech is not simply the ability to press post. It is the confidence to say what you genuinely believe when in public, in social media. Okay. And government also said that they will only use someone's identity when necessary. But we say that the important question is who decides what is necessary? If the government determines when an identity can be accessed, users have to trust that officials will always interpret necessary correctly. Even if the current government is responsible, future government officials or different interpretation of the promise could create problems for the citizens, you and me again. We win because government has not eliminated the risk. They have simply moved the decision-making power to the government. Okay, next is victim protection and that is what I'm proud to oppose. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank this speaker for their fine speech. Let's invite the final speaker of the room, the proposition reply.
Am I audible? Beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, do you want to know why using this database is a necessity? So, I'm going to restate my third speaker. Do you know how bad cybersecurity and cyberbullying cases are? As my third speaker has already said about cyberbullying. Cyberbullying roughly affects 51 to 21% of children and adolescents in high-income countries. This means that we are not including those of more modern or developing countries. Cyberbullying is especially difficult to contain because harmful content can reach large audiences and remain online, meaning the victim can continue encountering it beyond the original incident. Next, online scams. In 2025, Malaysia recorded 6,624 cybercrime cases with losses about 2.97 billion, and it's only cases that are uncovered. What about the thousands of other cases that are not shown? How much fast? And they also ask how much faster we can solve crimes. The time it takes to cross the data of the account and that person. But they also say that there are already existing ways. Know that doxing or IP searching that are already existing searching ways can take weeks or months, even if the person are smart enough, even if that person is only smart enough to use one VPN service that is totally free. And they also stated that there will be misuse. But what misuse? We already clearly stated if only there is cybersecurity and online scam laws that are already touched, which are going to be what the government is going to show. Additionally, even if a whistleblower is silenced, the rest of the billions of users won't even be affected. It is a complete red herring. Imagine if somebody's saying something against the government is silenced. It's going to be really obvious that something is wrong with the government. Like, let's just say somebody is just saying, oh, XYZ political figure secrets, and then they get shut down. Isn't it very obvious that the government has a problem? Say, now I'm going to prove why the side opposition's claim is not likely, the impact is too small, and the trade-off is way too small. So side opposition claim that the government will abuse the system. They never prove why it's likely. They assume the government will misuse the registry without proving how often or why this would happen. Our model has restricted access, legal authorization, logging, and oversight. Government abuse is therefore a possibility, not an inevitable outcome. The impact is also really small. Even if an official misuses the system, this affects specific cases, not every user. Ordinary users' identities will remain hidden from the public. Misuse can be investigated and punished through existing accountability mechanisms. That trade-off is also too small because they sacrifice the safety of millions of users to perceive complete anonymity for everyone. Our policy reduces scam, harassment, impersonating, and repeat offending really significantly. Protecting everyone from online harm outweighs the speculative risk of limited government misuse. They also give us a probability of abuse, but we give them a certain widespread concrete problem of an unaccountable online harm. Another thing side opposition has claimed is about what about hack accounts. They never prove why this is likely. They assume hackers will successfully access the registry link identity without proving why this is common. strong security measures such as encryption, multi-factor authentication, and monitoring can reduce this risk. Do you know that 16 characters with a random mix of uppercase, lowercase numbers, and symbols will take 1 billion years to crack? How is that even likely? A hacked social media account or a hacked social media account, even if it gets hacked, let's say in these billion years, it somehow gets hacked. A hacked social media account does not automatically mean the hacker gains access to the government registry. That impact is also very small, because if an account is hacked, the registry can still show the original verified user, helping the authorities investigate the takeover, which is still years faster. Hacking one account does not compromise the identities of everyone in the registry. Their trade-off is also way too small, because they focus on the possibility of some hacked accounts while ignoring the large-scale benefits of accountability. And a hacked account is a security problem that we can mitigate, but anonymous abuse is a systemic problem of our policy directly addresses, and this is why I'm proud to propose.
All right, thank you so much for that speech, and I'd like to thank everyone for the debate. Please shake the hands virtually and appreciate one another, but also